Get this trash out. Celeste Warrington's venomous voice sliced through the Plaza Hotel's glittering ballroom, her manicured hand cracking across Zaria Elise Kendall's cheek. The Black American CEO, stunning in a red silk V-neck dress, her long, straight hair cascading, stood frozen as wine splattered her gown. The Warringtons, Celeste, Gideon, Imogen, and Senator Thaddeus, circled, accusing her of crashing their elite gala. Imogen's live stream broadcast the humiliation to millions, branding Zaria an intruder. The crowd's phones flashed, eager to capture her downfall. But what secrets does Zaria hold? Can one woman's dignity topple an empire? Will justice prevail in this storm of privilege? Vote 1 if this tale grips you, 0 if it falters. Stay tuned, her counterstrike will shock the world. The air in the Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom hung heavy with the scent of ambition and roses, a glittering cage of crystal chandeliers and whispered power plays. Dr. Zaria Elise Kendall, a Black American woman of striking beauty, stood poised at the edge of the crowd, her long straight hair cascading like a midnight river over her red silk V-neck dress, its delicate spaghetti straps accentuating her elegance. Her almond eyes scanned the room, sharp yet guarded, as if sensing the storm about to break. The Gala, a beacon of New York's elite, pulsed with the clinking of champagne flutes and the rustle of couture, but for Zaria, it was a battlefield she'd entered knowingly. Get this trash out! The venomous command tore through the murmurs, silencing the room like a guillotine's fall. Celeste Warrington, matriarch of the Warrington dynasty, stood before Zaria, her pearl-encrusted wrist gleaming as she pointed a manicured finger. Her ice-blue eyes burned with contempt, her lips curling as if the mere sight of Zaria was an affront to her world. The crowd of 200, draped in diamonds and bespoke suits, froze, their gazes darting between the two women. Zaria's breath caught, her chest tightening, but her face remained a mask of quiet dignity, even as her heart thudded with the sting of betrayal. Not just from Celeste, but from the room itself, which seemed to lean in, hungry for her humiliation. Celeste's hand cracked across Zaria's cheek, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Pain flared, hot and sharp, but Zaria didn't flinch. Her eyes locked onto Celeste's, a silent defiance that made the older woman's smirk falter for a split second. "You don't belong here," Celeste hissed, her voice dripping with superiority. "Some nobody who snuck in, thinking she can mingle with us." Zaria's fingers tightened around her clutch, the smooth leather grounding her as she swallowed the urge to retort. She felt the weight of every stare, the collective judgment of Manhattan's elite pressing against her like a physical force. Her pride, forged through years of overcoming barriers as a Black woman in a world that rarely welcomed her, held her upright, but the betrayal cut deeper than the slap. Here was a room that should have known better, yet chose to condemn her. Gideon Warrington, Celeste's son and CEO of Warrington Ventures, stepped forward, his Rolex glinting as he adjusted his cufflinks. His smirk was a blade, slicing through the tension. "Look at that dress," he sneered, his voice loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Probably swiped from a thrift store rack." A ripple of laughter spread, cruel and eager, as guests clutched their phones, flashes erupting like a swarm of fireflies. Zaria's jaw clenched, the sting of Gideon's words mingling with the heat still pulsing in her cheek. She'd chosen this dress, its vibrant red a nod to her heritage, its elegance a quiet rebellion against the world's expectations. Yet now it was a target, wine-stained and mocked. Her heart ached, not for the insult, but for the ease with which this room turned her into a spectacle. Imogen Warrington, the family's influencer darling, held her phone aloft, live streaming to her 2.8 million followers. "Guys, we've got a gatecrasher at the Plaza Gala," she chirped, her voice syrupy with mock surprise. "That bag? Total flea market vibes. My followers are losing it." The live stream's viewer count surged to 70,000, comments flooding in. "Kick her out. Check her purse for stolen silver." Zaria's stomach twisted as she caught a glimpse of Imogen's screen, the toxic words scrolling like a digital lynch mob. She felt the weight of being reduced to a hashtag, a moment of entertainment for strangers who didn't know her story. her years of grinding through Ivy League halls, boardrooms, and sleepless nights to build an empire. Yet she stood still, her long hair framing her face like a shield, her eyes burning with a fire she kept tightly leashed. Senator Thaddeus Warrington, the family patriarch, leaned on his silver-tipped cane, his weathered face a mask of authority. "In 40 years of politics, I've seen her kind," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of a man accustomed to commanding rooms. "They read about galas and gossip rags and think they can infiltrate our world." The crowd murmured approval, their phones still recording, their loyalty to the Warringtons unwavering. Zaria's heart pounded, each word from Thaddeus a reminder of the barriers she'd fought to dismantle. Barriers that, in this moment, felt as solid as ever. She wanted to scream, to tell them who she was, but her discipline held her back. She knew the power of timing, the strength in waiting for the right moment to strike. The head of security, Malcolm Hayes, a grizzled ex-NYPD captain, approached cautiously, his eyes flickering with unease. "Ma'am, I need your invitation and ID," he said, his tone firm but tinged with doubt. Zaria met his gaze, her voice steady despite the chaos. "I'd like to call my assistant first." Celeste's laugh was sharp, cutting through the air. "No calls, she's stalling." "Typical." The crowd leaned closer, their phones forming a glowing cage, each flash a reminder of Zaria's isolation. She felt the betrayal deepen, not just from the Warringtons, but from Malcolm, whose hesitations suggested he sensed the truth, but lacked the courage to act. Her fingers brushed the wine-stained silk of her dress, grounding her in the moment, her resolve hardening like steel. The Warringtons moved closer, their coordinated attack relentless. Celeste's voice rose, addressing the crowd. "This is what happens when people forget their place." Her words were a rallying cry, and the guests responded with nods and whispers, their privilege a shared armor. Zaria's chest tightened, the weight of their judgment threatening to crush her, but her eyes never wavered. She felt the sting of being othered, of being reduced to a stereotype in a room that prided itself on sophistication. Yet beneath the pain, a fire burned, a certainty that this moment, this betrayal, would not define her. She stood taller, her red dress a beacon in the storm, her long hair a silent testament to her resilience. As the gala host's voice echoed through the speakers, 2 minutes until our charity auction closes." Zaria's heart steadied. She knew the clock was ticking, not just for the auction, but for the moment she'd turn this betrayal into something else entirely. The crowd's phones, Imogen's live stream, the Warringtons' smug certainty, they were all pieces in a game she'd played before. Her fingers tightened on her clutch, where her phone buzzed with notifications she'd yet to acknowledge. The world was watching, but they didn't know her yet. Zaria's lips curved ever so slightly, a hint of the storm she was about to unleash. The sting on Zaria Elise Kendall's cheek pulsed like a heartbeat, but her eyes remained unyielding, fixed on the Warringtons as they closed in like predators savoring a kill. The Plaza Ballroom's opulence, its gilded walls and rose-scented air, faded into a suffocating haze, the crowd's murmurs a low growl of complicity. Zaria stood resolute, her red silk V-neck dress clinging to her frame, wine-soaked but defiant, her long, straight hair framing her face like a warrior's banner. The betrayal from moments ago had ignited a fire in her chest, not of rage but of clarity. She knew this game, knew the cost of being underestimated, and felt the weight of every black woman who'd faced such scorn. Her heart thrummed with resolve, but she held it close, her composure a shield against the onslaught. Celeste Warrington stepped closer, her pearl necklace glinting like a noose under the chandelier's glow. "Look at her," she sneered, her voice a blade honed by decades of unchecked privilege. "That cheap silk can't hide what you are. A nobody who thought she could fool us." Zaria's fingers twitched against her clutch, the insult landing like a lash. But her face betrayed nothing. She felt the familiar ache of being judged by her skin, her presence an affront to Celeste's world of inherited power. Yet beneath the pain, Zaria's mind was sharp, cataloging every word, every glance, knowing they'd fuel her counterstrike. Her beauty, her poise, her very existence in this room challenged their assumptions, and that alone made her dangerous. Gideon Warrington, his smirk as polished as his cufflinks, leaned in, his breath tinged with whiskey. "My company funds half this city's skyline," he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "I'd know if you belonged here. That dress? It's screaming discount rack." The crowd's laughter was a jagged edge, cutting into Zaria's pride. She felt their eyes dissecting her, her red dress, her long hair, her quiet strength, reducing her to a caricature. Her heart clenched, not from shame but from the weight of their ignorance. She'd clawed her way through boardrooms where men like Gideon dismissed her, and each slight only sharpened her resolve. She stood taller, the silk clinging to her curves, a silent rebuke to their mockery. Imogen Warrington, her phone a gleaming weapon, angled her live stream for maximum impact. "Guys, this is wild," she chirped to her 2.8 million followers, the viewer count spiking to 100,000. "Her bag's giving dollar store vibes. My fans are eating this up." The comment section erupted. "Toss her out. She's stealing someone's spot." Zaria caught a glimpse of the screen, the venomous words scrolling like a digital guillotine. Her stomach churned, not from the insults but from the ease with which Imogen turned her pain into entertainment. Zaria's fingers brushed her hair, grounding herself in its familiar weight, her heart aching for the countless others who'd been reduced to hashtags. Yet she felt a spark of defiance. Imogen's followers didn't know the truth, but they would soon. Senator Thaddeus Warrington tapped his silver-tipped cane, his voice booming with the authority of a man who'd shaped laws and broken opponents. "I've seen her kind in my 40 years, he declared, his eyes narrowing on Zaria. "They read about galas in tabloids and sneak in, thinking they can rub shoulders with power." The crowd nodded, their phones still flashing, their loyalty to the Warringtons a fortress of privilege. Zaria's chest tightened, Thaddeus's words echoing the dismissals she'd faced her entire career. Her degrees, her achievements, her empire, all invisible to those who saw only her skin. She wanted to shout her truth, to shatter their smug certainty, but her discipline held her back. Her heart pounded with the knowledge that timing was everything, and hers was coming. Malcolm Hayes, the ex-NYPD captain heading security, stepped forward, his weathered face betraying a flicker of unease. "Ma'am, I need your invitation and ID," he said, his tone clipped but hesitant, as if sensing the fault lines beneath this moment. Zaria met his gaze, her voice steady, almost serene. "I'd like to call my assistant first." Celeste's laugh was a whip crack. "No calls, she's dodging." "Typical." Malcolm's eyes darted to Celeste, then back to Zaria, his gut telling him something was off, but his duty tethered to the Warringtons' command. Zaria felt a pang of sympathy for him, caught in their web, yet her resolve hardened. She'd been judged by men like him before, and she'd always emerged stronger. The crowd pressed closer, their phones a constellation of glowing screens, each flash a silent accusation. Imogen's live stream surged to 120,000 viewers, comments growing uglier. "She's probably on drugs." "Check her for stolen jewelry." Zaria's heart twisted, the racial slurs cutting deeper than the slap, reminding her of the world's relentless need to diminish her. She felt the weight of her ancestors' struggles, of every moment she'd been told she didn't belong. Yet her eyes burned with a quiet fire, her poise unshaken. She'd built her empire in rooms like this, against odds like these, and she'd do it again. The gala host's voice cut through the tension. "1 minute until our charity auction closes." The announcement was a ticking bomb, amplifying the pressure. Celeste smirked, her voice rising for the crowd. "Get her out before the real donors take the stage." Gideon dialed his corporate security team, his tone clipped. "Send a squad to the plaza. Trespasser, now." Imogen angled her phone, her voice breathless. "Guys, she's about to be dragged out. Should I follow for the arrest footage?" The comments roared approval, a digital mob baying for blood. Zaria's heart steadied, her fingers brushing the wine-stained silk of her dress. She felt the crowd's hunger, the Warringtons' arrogance, the world's eyes on her. But she also felt the power coiled within her, waiting to be unleashed. Her lips curved faintly, a promise of the storm to come. The plaza ballroom's air crackled with malice, the crowd's murmurs a low hum of anticipation as Zaria Elise Kendall stood at the heart of the Warringtons' assault. Her red silk V-neck dress, wine-stained but radiant, clung to her like a second skin. Her long, straight hair, a cascade of defiance framing her unyielding face. The sting of Celeste's slap lingered on her cheek, but it was the weight of the room's judgment that pressed harder. Each flash from the sea of phones a silent verdict. Zoria's heart pounded, not with fear but with a steely resolve. She'd faced rooms like this before, their privilege a weapon, their ignorance a blindfold. Yet beneath her poised exterior, she felt the ache of being seen as less, her beauty and strength twisted into a narrative of intrusion. She held her clutch tightly, its contents her armor, her silence a calculated choice. Celeste Warrington circled closer, her pearl necklace glinting like a predator's eyes. "She's stalling," she spat, her voice a whip lashing the crowd into agreement. "Probably planning to slip out with someone's jewels." The accusation landed like a stone in Zaria's chest, her pride flaring at the stereotype. She wanted to retort, to lay bare the absurdity of Celeste's claim, but she bit back the impulse, her eyes narrowing with a fire that promised reckoning. Celeste, oblivious to the shift, turned to the crowd, her arms wide as if conducting an orchestra of scorn. "This is why we guard our spaces," she declared, her tone dripping with self-righteous venom. Zarya felt the room tilt, the weight of centuries-old biases pressing against her, but her heart held firm, anchored by the knowledge of who she was and what she wielded. Gideon Warrington stepped forward, his smirk a polished blade, his voice carrying the confidence of a man who'd never been challenged. "I'd know if she was anyone worth knowing," he said, his eyes raking over Zarya's dress with disdain. "Warrington Ventures bankrolls half this city's dreams. That silk, it's screaming secondhand." The crowd's laughter was a jagged chorus, each chuckle a needle in Zaria's skin. She felt the familiar sting of being reduced, her Harvard doctorate, her boardroom victories, her empire, all erased by Gideon's casual cruelty. Her fingers brushed her hair, grounding her in the moment, her heart aching for the countless others who'd stood in her place, judged not for their deeds, but their existence. Yet she stood taller, her red dress a defiant flame in the dimming light. Imogen Warrington, her phone a glowing beacon, leaned in, her live stream now at 150,000 viewers. "OMG, guys, she's just standing there," she squealed, her voice a mix of glee and theatrical disgust. "Like, doesn't she get that she's caught? My followers are going wild." The comment section was a toxic flood. "Arrest her. She's probably got warrants." Zarya caught a glimpse of the screen, the racial slurs cutting deeper than any physical blow. Her stomach twisted, not from shame but from the raw betrayal of a world that weaponized her identity for clicks. She felt the ghosts of her ancestors, their struggles echoing in this moment, urging her to hold fast. Her eyes burned, not with tears but with a quiet fury, her silence louder than Imogen's broadcast. Senator Thaddeus Warrington tapped his silver-tipped cane, his voice a low growl of authority. "I've built my career rooting out frauds like her," he said, his gaze pinning Zariah like a specimen. "She's here to exploit, nothing more." The crowd nodded, their phones still flashing, their allegiance to Thaddeus a wall of power. Zariah's heart clenched, his words a reminder of the systems she'd fought, systems he'd helped build, where her skin was a presumption of guilt. She wanted to shatter his certainty, to make him choke on his own arrogance. But she held back, her discipline a steel cage around her emotions. She felt the weight of every door slammed in her face, every slight she turned into fuel, and knew this moment would be no different. Malcolm Hayes, the security chief, shifted uneasily, his hand hovering near his radio. "Ma'am, I need that ID now," he said, his voice tinged with doubt, as if sensing the fault lines beneath his confrontation. Zarya's eyes met his, steady and piercing. "I'd like to call my assistant," she repeated, her tone calm but unyielding. Celeste's laugh was a sharp bark. "She's desperate. No calls. Take her out." Malcolm hesitated, his gut screaming that something was wrong, but the Warringtons' influence loomed large. Zarya felt a flicker of pity for him, trapped by duty, yet her resolve hardened. She'd been underestimated before, and it had always been their mistake. The Gala host's voice boomed, 30 seconds until the auction closes." The words were a ticking clock, amplifying the tension. Celeste's eyes gleamed. Get her out before the real players bid. Gideon barked into his phone. Security team, Plaza, now. Trespasser. Imogen's livestream hit 170,000 viewers, her voice breathless. She's done for, guys. Should I follow her to the station? The comments were a frenzy. Make her famous for the wrong reasons. Zarya's heart steadied, the chaos around her fading into focus. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, a missed call from the Commerce Secretary. She ignored them, her fingers brushing the silk of her dress, the red a symbol of her fire. The crowd's phones formed a glowing noose, but Zarya felt no fear, only the certainty of what was coming. Her lips twitched, a faint promise of the upheaval she'd unleash. The plaza ballroom pulsed with a predatory hum, the crowd's eyes glinting like vultures as they closed in on Zarya Elise Kendall. Her red silk V-neck dress, stained with wine, shimmered defiantly under the chandelier's glow. Her long, straight hair, a cascade of resilience framing her unbowed face. The sting of Celeste's slap and the Warrington's venomous words lingered, but Zarya's heart was a furnace, burning with a quiet fury that steadied her. She felt the weight of every stare, every flash from the sea of phones, as if the room itself sought to erase her. Yet beneath the surface, her resolve was iron. She'd faced this before, the world's attempt to diminish her, and each time, she'd turned their scorn into her strength. Her fingers gripped her clutch, a lifeline to the truth she held close. Celeste Warrington loomed closer, her pearl necklace a cold constellation against her throat. "She's got nothing," she sneered, her voice a serrated edge meant to cut deeper than her slap. "Look at her, standing there like she belongs. Pathetic." Zarya's chest tightened, the insult a fresh wound, but her eyes held Celeste's with a defiance that made the matriarch's smirk flicker. She felt the ache of being misjudged, her beauty, her intellect, her very presence twisted into a lie. But Zarya's heart whispered a truth she'd learned long ago. Their ignorance was her weapon, and she'd wield it with precision. Celeste turned to the crowd, her arms wide, a queen addressing her court. "This is why we protect our spaces," she declared, her tone a rallying cry for privilege. Zarya's pride flared, but she held it in check, her silence a coiled spring. Gideon Warrington, his Rolex catching the light, stepped forward, his voice dripping with corporate arrogance. "I'd know if she was worth a dime," he said, his gaze raking over Zarya's wine-soaked dress. "Warrington Ventures owns half this city's future. That's silk. It's screaming charity shop." The crowd's laughter was a cruel wave, crashing against Zarya's resolve. She felt the sting of their dismissal, her years of building an empire reduced to a cheap jab. Her fingers brushed her hair, grounding her in the moment, her heart heavy with the memory of countless rooms where she'd been underestimated. Yet she stood taller, the red silk clinging to her like armor, her beauty a quiet rebellion against their cruelty. Imogen Warrington, her phone a glowing sword, angled her live stream for maximum drama, the viewer count soaring to 190,000. "Guys, she's not even fighting back," she giggled, her voice a mix of glee and disdain. "Like, does she think she can just stand there? My followers are freaking out." The comment section was a digital inferno. "Drag her out. She's got to be hiding something." Zarya glimpsed the screen, the racial slurs a gut punch, each one a reminder of the world's eagerness to tear her down. Her stomach churned, not from shame, but from the betrayal of a society that turned her pain into spectacle. She felt the echoes of her grandmother's stories, of battles fought against prejudice, urging her to hold fast. Her eyes burned with a fire she kept leashed, her silence louder than Imogen's broadcast. Senator Thaddeus Warrington tapped his silver-tipped cane, his voice a low rumble of authority. "I've spent decades weeding out imposters," he said, his gaze pinning Zarya like a verdict. "She's here to exploit our generosity, nothing more." The crowd nodded, their phones still flashing, their loyalty to Thaddeus a fortress of power. Zarya's heart clenched, his words a mirror to the systems she'd fought. Systems he'd built, where her existence was a presumption of guilt. She wanted to shatter his smug certainty, to make him choke on his own arrogance. But her discipline was a steel cage around her emotions. She felt the weight of every door she'd forced open, every slight she'd turned into fuel, and knew this moment would be no different. Malcolm Hayes, the security chief, shifted uneasily, his hand on his radio. "Ma'am, I need that ID now," he said, his tone clipped but wavering, as if sensing the tremor beneath this moment. Zaria's eyes met his, calm and piercing. "I'd like to call my assistant," she repeated, her voice a quiet blade. Celeste's laugh was a sharp crack. "Desperate! No calls! Take her out!" Malcolm's eyes darted to Celeste, then back to Zaria, his gut screaming that he was missing something vital. Zarya felt a flicker of empathy for him, caught in their web, but her resolve was unshakable. She'd been underestimated before, and it had always been their undoing. The Gala host's voice boomed. 10 seconds until the auction closes." The words were a ticking bomb, the crowd's anticipation electric. Celeste's eyes gleamed. "Get her out before the bids are sealed." Gideon barked into his phone. "Security Plaza now. Trespasser." Imogen's live stream hit 200,000 viewers, her voice breathless. "She's done, guys. Should I follow her to the precinct?" The comments were a frenzy. "Make her viral. For the wrong reasons." Zarya's heart steadied, the chaos sharpening her focus. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, a missed call from the Commerce Secretary. She ignored them, her fingers tracing the silk of her dress, its red hue a symbol of her fire. The crowd's phones formed a glowing noose, but Zarya felt only the certainty of her next move. Her lips curved faintly, a promise of the reckoning to come. The Plaza Ballroom's electric tension crackled, a storm poised to break as Zarya Elise Kendall stood unwavering amidst the Warringtons' predatory circle. Her red silk V-neck dress, wine-stained but luminous, hugged her frame like a battle flag, her long, straight hair a cascade of defiance framing her resolute face. The crowd's phones, a constellation of glowing accusations, pulsed with the rhythm of Imogen's live stream. Now at 200,000 viewers, their venomous comments a digital roar. Zarya's heart thundered, not from fear but from the certainty of her moment. The Warrington scorn, the crowd's complicity, the sting of Celeste's slap. They were fuel for the fire she'd kept banked within her. She felt the weight of every misjudgment, every barrier she'd shattered as a black woman in a world that tried to define her, and her resolve crystallized into something unbreakable. Her fingers tightened on her clutch, the key to her counterstrike. Celeste Warrington leaned closer, her pearl necklace glinting like a blade in the chandelier's light. "She's got nothing to say," she taunted, her voice a venomous hiss meant to seal Zarya's fate. "Just another fraud exposed." Zarya's chest ached, the insult a fresh wound atop the betrayal, but her eyes held Celeste's with a quiet ferocity that made the matriarch's smirk falter. She felt the pain of being reduced to a stereotype, her beauty and intellect dismissed by a woman who thrived on inherited power. Yet Zarya's heart burned with the knowledge that Celeste's arrogance was a house of cards, and she was about to topple it. Her silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy, honed in boardrooms where she'd turned doubt into dominance. Gideon Warrington, his Rolex a cold flash, stepped forward, his voice dripping with corporate disdain. "I'd know if she were anyone," he scoffed, his gaze slicing over Zarya's wine-soaked dress. "Warrington Ventures shapes this city's future. She's nobody." The crowd's murmurs swelled, their laughter a cruel echo. Zarya's pride stung, Gideon's words a reminder of the countless times her achievements were erased by men like him. She felt the weight of her journey, nights spent studying, deals forged against odds, an empire built from grit, and it steadied her. Her fingers brushed her hair, grounding her, her heart pulsing with a fire she kept tightly leashed. She stood taller, the red silk a defiant blaze against their judgment. Imogen Warrington, her phone a glowing weapon, angled her live stream for maximum impact, the viewer count spiking to 220,000. "Guys, she's just standing there," she squealed, her voice a mix of glee and scorn. "Like, does she think she can fake her way out? My followers are obsessed." The comment section was a digital maelstrom. "Arrest her now." "She's got to be guilty." Zarya glimpsed the screen, the racial slurs a gut punch, each one a wound to her soul. She felt the echoes of her ancestors' battles, their resilience urging her to hold fast. Her stomach churned, not from shame, but from the betrayal of a world that turned her pain into clicks. Her eyes burned with a quiet fury, her silence a thunderclap waiting to break. Senator Thaddeus Warrington tapped his silver-tipped cane, his voice a low growl of authority. "I've crushed imposters like her for decades," he declared, his gaze pinning Zaria like a verdict. "She's here to steal our spotlight." The crowd nodded, their phones still flashing, their loyalty to Thaddeus a wall of privilege. Zaria's heart clenched, his words a mirror to the systems she'd fought, systems he'd fortified, where her existence was a presumption of deceit. She wanted to shatter his certainty, to make him choke on his arrogance, but her discipline was a steel cage. She felt the weight of every triumph she'd earned, every slight she'd turned into fuel, and knew this moment would be her greatest yet. Malcolm Hayes, the security chief, shifted, his hand on his radio, his eyes flickering with doubt. "Ma'am, I need that ID now," he said, his tone wavering, as if sensing the fault lines beneath this moment. Zaria's eyes met his, calm and piercing. "I'd like to call my assistant," she repeated, her voice a quiet blade slicing through the chaos. Celeste's laugh was a sharp crack. "She's desperate. Take her out." Malcolm hesitated, his gut screaming. He was missing something vital, but the Warringtons' influence loomed. Zaria felt a flicker of empathy for him, caught in their web, but her resolve was unshakable. She'd been underestimated before, and it had always been their downfall. The Gala host's voice boomed, 5 seconds until the auction closes. The words were a ticking bomb, the crowd's anticipation a live wire. Zaria's phone buzzed in her clutch. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, a missed call from the Commerce Secretary. She ignored them, her fingers tracing the silk of her dress, its red hue a symbol of her fire. Then she acted. With deliberate grace, she opened her clutch, withdrew her phone, and held the screen toward Malcolm. His face drained of color, his jaw slackening. "Ms. Carver," he whispered to the Gala director, Evelyn Carver, "we've got a serious problem." Imogen's live stream, now at 240,000 viewers, caught his panic in vivid detail. Evelyn peered at the screen and staggered, clutching a table. "What's on that phone?" Celeste demanded, her voice cracking with the first hint of fear. Zaria's screen displayed her Forbes profile. Dr. Zaria Elise Kendall, CEO of Zenith Global Finance, net worth $3.8 billion, ranked at 35 on Global Power List. Below, a text from the Commerce Secretary, "Zaria, we need your approval on the 1.2 B investment deal by midnight." The crowd gasped, a collective intake of breath. Imogen's comment section exploded. "She's a billionaire? The Warringtons are done." Zaria's heart soared, not with triumph, but with the quiet certainty of justice. Her red dress gleamed, her long hair a crown, as she stood ready to rewrite the narrative. The Plaza ballroom froze, a stunned silence swallowing the hum of malice as Zaria Elise Kendall stood at its center, her red silk V-neck dress a defiant ember in the dim light, her long straight hair framing her like a halo of resolve. The glow of her phone screen lingered in the air. Its Forbes profile, Dr. Zaria Elise Kendall, CEO of Zenith Global Finance, net worth $3.8 billion, a blade that had just sliced through the Warringtons' arrogance. Her heart pulsed with a quiet triumph, not of vengeance but of clarity. The crowd's gasps, the flickering panic in Malcolm Hayes' eyes, the crack in Celeste's composure. They were the first tremors of a reckoning she'd orchestrated. Zaria felt the weight of her journey, every dismissal, every barrier broken as a black woman in a world that sought to confine her, and it fueled her. Her fingers brushed the wine-stained silk, grounding her in this moment of power. Celeste Warrington, her pearl necklace now a pale mockery of her authority, clutched the edge of a table, her face ashen. "That's impossible," she stammered, her voice a brittle thread, unraveling under the weight of Zaria's truth. The matriarch's eyes darted to the crowd, seeking allies, but found only shock. Zaria's chest tightened, not from Celeste's disbelief, but from the pain of being unseen for so long. Her intellect, her empire, her very existence reduced to trash moments ago. Yet her gaze held steady, a silent promise that Celeste's world was about to crumble. She felt the ghosts of her ancestors, their resilience urging her forward, and her heart swelled with the certainty that this moment was theirs too. Gideon Warrington, his Rolex now a hollow symbol, stared at the shattered remnants of his phone on the marble floor. "You're nobody," he whispered, more to himself than to Zaria, his corporate swagger evaporating. The crowd's murmurs grew, a tide of unease washing over them. Zaria's pride stung at the memory of Gideon's scorn, but her heart burned with a fire forged in boardrooms where she'd turned doubt into dominance. "You'd know if you'd looked beyond your assumptions," she said, her voice calm but cutting, each word a scalpel. She felt the weight of every deal she'd closed, every night spent building Zenith, and it anchored her as she faced Gideon's unraveling confidence. Imogen Warrington's phone trembled in her hands, her live stream soaring to 260,000 viewers, the comment section a chaotic swirl. "She's a billionaire? Warringtons are screwed. Guys, I didn't know," she stammered into the camera, her influencer poise cracking. Zaria glimpsed the screen. The shift in tone a small victory, but the racial slurs still lingered in her memory, each one a wound to her soul. She felt the ache of being reduced to a spectacle, her life a clickbait moment for Imogen's followers. Yet her heart steadied. She'd faced worse, turned digital hate into fuel, and this would be no different. Her long hair swayed as she shifted, her red dress a beacon of defiance, her silence louder than Imogen's faltering narration. Senator Thaddeus Warrington gripped his silver-tipped cane, his face a mask of political calculation, crumbling under pressure. "This can't be," he muttered, his voice a low growl, but his eyes betrayed fear. The crowd's phones, once weapons, now faltered, some guests lowering them in shame. Zaria's heart clenched, Thaddeus's dismissal echoing the systems she'd fought, systems he'd built to keep her kind out. She wanted to make him choke on his own arrogance, but her discipline held her like armor. She felt the weight of every law she'd influenced, every barrier she'd shattered, and knew this moment would redefine his legacy. Malcolm Hayes, the security chief, stepped back, his radio clattering to the floor, the sound echoing in the hushed room. "Ms. Carver," he whispered to the gala director, Evelyn Carver, "we need to stand down." Evelyn, her face pale, nodded, her hands trembling as she clutched the table. "Dr. Kendall, your $35 million donation funded this gala," she stammered, her voice barely audible. Zaria's heart softened for a moment, sensing Evelyn's genuine shock, but her focus remained on the Warringtons. She felt the pain of being misjudged, but also the power of being the one to rewrite the narrative. Her fingers tightened on her clutch, where her phone buzzed. Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, the Commerce Secretary's urgent text. Zaria opened her clutch, withdrawing a sleek leather portfolio, its pages tabbed with surgical precision. "Celeste," she said, her voice a quiet thunder, "your family's charity survives on my $180 million in anonymous grants." Celeste's knees buckled, her pearl necklace trembling. "Gideon, my firm provides 50% of Warrington Ventures capital, a $1 billion deal." Gideon's face drained, his corporate empire exposed as fragile. "Imogen, my investment group owns 65% of your sponsors." Imogen's phone slipped, her live stream stuttering. "Thaddeus, my PAC funded $12 million of your last election." Thaddeus's cane shook, his political fortress crumbling. The crowd gasped, some guests backing away, their phones now stilled, their shame palpable. Zaria's heart soared, not with vengeance, but with the clarity of justice. She felt the weight of every black woman who'd been dismissed, every ancestor who'd fought for this moment. Her red dress gleamed, her long hair a crown of resilience. "You thought you knew me," she said, her voice steady, each word a hammer. "But you know nothing." The crowd's murmurs died, their eyes wide with awe and fear. Imogen's live stream hit 280,000 viewers, comments now pleading, "Stop the stream. She's unstoppable." Zaria stood taller, her beauty and power undeniable, ready to dictate the terms that would reshape their world. The plaza ballroom hung in a breathless hush, the air thick with the aftershock of Zaria Elise Kendall's revelation. Her red silk V-neck dress, still bearing the stain of wine, shimmered like a battle standard. Her long, straight hair a cascade of defiance framing her unyielding gaze. The crowd's phones, once a glowing cage, now faltered, their flashes dimming as shame rippled through the guests. Zaria's heart pulsed with a quiet fire, the weight of her truth. Dr. Zaria Elise Kendall, CEO of Zenith Global Finance, $3.8 billion net worth, still echoing in the stunned silence. She felt the sting of Celeste's slap, the Warrington's scorn, and the crowd's complicity, but it was the power of this moment that steadied her. Every barrier she'd broken as a black woman, every dismissal she'd turned into fuel, converged here, and her resolve was a blade honed for justice. Celeste Warrington, her pearl necklace a pale relic of her former authority, clung to the table, her face a mask of crumbling supremacy. "This can't be," she whispered, her voice a fractured plea, her eyes darting to the crowd for salvation, but finding only averted gazes. Zaria's chest tightened, not from pity but from the memory of Celeste's venom, calling her trash, striking her in front of hundreds. She felt the ache of being reduced to a stereotype, her beauty and intellect dismissed by a woman who thrived on inherited power. Yet Zaria's heart burned with purpose. Celeste's world was unraveling, and she would dictate its reconstruction. Her silence was no longer restraint, it was command, her every word poised to reshape their reality. Gideon Warrington stood frozen, the shards of his shattered phone a testament to his broken confidence. "You're nobody," he stammered, his voice barely audible, his corporate swagger dissolved. The crowd's murmurs grew, a tide of unease washing over them. Zaria's pride stung at the echo of Gideon's earlier taunts, but her heart swelled with the certainty of her dominion. "You'd know if you'd look beyond your privilege," she said, her voice a quiet thunder, each syllable a strike against his arrogance. She felt the weight of her empire, built through sleepless nights, relentless ambition, and battles won against men like him, and it anchored her as she faced his unraveling empire. Imogen Warrington's phone trembled in her hands, her live stream surging to 300,000 viewers. The comment section a chaotic swirl. "She's a queen. Warringtons are done. I didn't mean," she whispered into the camera, her influencer poise shattered, tears smudging her mascara. Zaria glimpsed the screen, the shift in tone a small victory, but the racial slurs still lingered in her memory, each one a wound to her soul. She felt the pain of being reduced to a spectacle, her life a clickbait moment for Imogen's followers. Yet her heart steadied. She'd turned hate into power before, and this would be no different. Her long hair swayed as she shifted, her red dress a beacon of defiance, her presence a rebuke to Imogen's digital empire. Senator Thaddeus Warrington gripped his silver-tipped cane, his face a battlefield of fear and calculation. "This changes nothing," he growled, but his trembling voice betrayed him. The crowd's phones lowered further, some guests slipping toward the exits, their shame palpable. Zaria's heart clenched, Thaddeus's defiance a mirror to the systems she'd fought, systems he'd fortified to exclude her kind. She wanted to make him choke on his own hubris, but her discipline held her like armor. She felt the weight of every law she'd influenced, every barrier she'd shattered, and knew this moment would redefine his legacy. Malcolm Hayes, the security chief, backed away, his radio silent, his eyes wide with realization. "Ms. Carver," he whispered to the gala director, Evelyn Carver, "we need to stop this now." Evelyn, her face pale, nodded, her hands shaking. "Dr. Kendall, your $35 million donation made this gala possible," she stammered, her voice a plea for forgiveness. Zaria's heart softened briefly, sensing Evelyn's genuine regret, but her focus remained on the Warringtons. She felt the pain of being misjudged, but also the power of rewriting the narrative. Her fingers closed around her leather portfolio, its pages tabbed with lethal precision. Zaria opened the portfolio, her movements deliberate, each page a weapon. "Celeste," she said, her voice a calm blade, "your family's charity survives on my $180 million in grants." Celeste's knees buckled, her pearls trembling. "Gideon, My firm funds 50% of Warrington Ventures' $1 billion in capital. Gideon's face drained, his empire exposed as fragile. Imogen, my investment group owns 65% of your sponsors. Imogen's phone slipped, her livestream stuttering. Thaddeus, my PAC funded 12 million of your election. Thaddeus's cane shook, his political fortress crumbling. The crowd gasped, some guests backing away, their phones now stilled, their shame a tangible weight. Zarya snapped the portfolio shut, the sound echoing like a gavel. You have one choice, comply or lose everything. Celeste's voice broke, a desperate whisper. What do you want? Zarya's demands were surgical. Celeste must apologize publicly on all platforms within 24 hours, resign from 4 charity boards, and donate $10 million to the ILBNOACP Legal Defense Fund. Gideon must implement company-wide bias training, promote 3 Black executives, and publish quarterly diversity reports. Imogen must delete her live stream, post an apology video within 12 hours, promote Black-owned businesses for a year, and donate all earnings. Thaddeus must co-sponsor an anti-discrimination bill and redirect $12 million in campaign funds to civil rights groups. Zarya's heart soared, not with vengeance but with the clarity of justice, her red dress a symbol of her fire, her long hair a crown of resilience. The plaza ballroom silence was a living thing, heavy with the weight of Zarya Elise Kendall's ultimatum. Her red silk V-neck dress, wine-stained yet radiant, gleamed like a victor's banner, her long straight hair a cascade of quiet power framing her resolute face. The Warringtons stood defeated, their once impenetrable fortress of privilege shattered by Zarya's truth. The crowd's phones, once weapons of complicity, now hung limp, their owners' faces etched with shame and awe. Zarya's heart thrummed with a steady fire, not of vengeance but of purpose. She felt the echoes of her ancestors' struggles, the countless Black women who'd faced scorn and risen, their resilience coursing through her. The Warrington surrender was not the end. It was the beginning of a reckoning that would ripple beyond this room, and Zarya stood ready to shape its course. Celeste Warrington, her pearl necklace a faded emblem of her former reign, sank into a chair, her hands trembling. I comply, she whispered, her voice a broken thread, her eyes avoiding Zarya's piercing gaze. The matriarch's heart churned with a mix of fear and humiliation, the realization that her empire of influence rested on Zarya's mercy. Zarya felt a flicker of pity, but it was fleeting. Celeste's slap, her venomous words, had been a choice, and now she faced the consequences. Zarya's chest swelled with the weight of her mission, not to destroy, but to rebuild, to force a woman who'd wielded privilege as a weapon to confront its cost. Her red dress shimmered, a symbol of her unyielding fire, as she nodded once, sealing Celeste's fate. Gideon Warrington, his shattered phone a mirror of his broken arrogance, nodded stiffly, his face pale. Warrington Ventures will meet your terms, he said, his voice hollow, stripped of its corporate swagger. Zarya's heart stirred, the memory of Gideon's taunts, calling her dress second-hand, her presence an insult, still sharp. She felt the weight of every boardroom where she'd been dismissed, every deal she'd won against men like him, and it fueled her resolve. Gideon's empire, built on her capital, was now hers to reshape. She stood taller, her long hair swaying, her presence a quiet rebuke to his hubris. The crowd watched, some whispering, others slipping toward the exits, their shame a palpable fog. Imogen Warrington's phone, overheating from her live stream's 320,000 viewers, slipped from her hands, crashing to the marble floor. I'll do it, she sobbed, tears carving paths through her makeup, her influencer facade shattered. The comment section, once a cesspool of hate, now churned with awe. She's a legend! Imogen's done! Zarya glimpsed the screen, the shift a small victory, but the racial slurs lingered in her memory, each one a scar. She felt the pain of being a spectacle, her life reduced to clicks, but also the power of turning that spotlight against her attackers. Her heart steadied. She'd faced digital mobs before, and this would be her triumph. Her red dress glowed, her beauty undeniable, as she met Imogen's tearful gaze with unflinching calm. Senator Thaddeus Warrington gripped his silver-tipped cane, his face a battlefield of fear and resignation. "I accept your terms," he said, his voice a low rumble, his political instincts screaming defeat. The crowd's phones were nearly all lowered, some guests turning away, their loyalty to Thaddeus crumbling. Zaria's heart clenched, his earlier words calling her an imposter, echoing the system she'd fought. She felt the weight of every law she'd influenced, every barrier she'd broken, and knew this moment would redefine his legacy. Thaddeus's surrender was not just personal. It was a crack in the systems he'd upheld. Zaria's resolve hardened, her long hair a crown of resilience, her presence a force that demanded reckoning. Malcolm Hayes, the security chief, stood back, his radio silent, his eyes wide with relief and regret. "Ms. Carver," he murmured to the gala director, Evelyn Carver, "we dodged a bullet." Evelyn, her face ashen, nodded, her hands still shaking. "Dr. Kendall, we're so sorry," she said, her voice a plea. Zaria's heart softened briefly, sensing their genuine remorse, but her focus remained on the Warringtons. She felt the pain of being misjudged, but also the power of rewriting the narrative. Her portfolio lay closed on the table, its contents a sword she'd wielded with precision. The crowd's whispers grew, some guests applauding softly, their shame giving way to awe at Zaria's command. 6 months later, the Warringtons' transformation began to reshape the world. Celeste's apology video, filmed in her Fifth Avenue penthouse, hit 15 million views, her voice raw as she admitted her prejudice. She resigned from 4 charity boards and donated $10 million to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, becoming a mentor for equitable philanthropy. Gideon's company implemented Zaria's reforms, promoting 3 Black executives, Dr. Imani Clark, Terrence Holt, and Nia Ramsey, whose innovations boosted stock prices by 28%. Imogen's apology video reached 20 million views. Her year-long promotion of Black-owned businesses grew her platform to 4.5 million authentic followers, and her marriage to activist Khalil Vance marked a new chapter. Thaddeus's anti-discrimination bill passed, his $12 million redirected to civil rights groups, earning him unexpected support from diverse voters. The Kendall Protocols emerged, mandating ethical clauses against discrimination at public events, adopted by 700 companies, reducing harassment incidents by 70%. Social media platforms, using Imogen's stream as a case study, tightened anti-harassment policies. Zaria, in her red silk dress, spoke at a G20 summit, her voice carrying, "Power doesn't shout, it builds justice that endures." Her net worth hit $4.5 billion, her influence global. Zaria's heart soared, not with triumph, but with the clarity of her legacy, a world reshaped by dignity. Share your moment of quiet power below. Stay for more stories of justice. Zaria Elise Kendall's triumph in the Plaza Ballroom, her red silk dress a symbol of unyielding dignity, leaves a legacy that resonates beyond the page. Her story, a Black woman's rise against prejudice, challenges us to confront injustice with strength and strategy. What's your moment of quiet power? Share your thoughts below. Your voice could inspire others to stand tall. Thank you for joining Zaria's journey, for feeling her fire, and for witnessing justice unfold. Your engagement fuels these stories of resilience. Stay tuned for more tales where dignity reshapes the world. Subscribe, and let's meet again in the next chapter of Courage and Change.